Dear Venerable, dear sisters, Dhamma friends, the time for our day's Dhamma talk. To start the Dhamma talk, may all consent with 3 times sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tasse bhagavatu arahato samma sambuddhassa namo tasse bhagavatu arahato samma sambuddhasse namo tasse bhagavatu arahato samma sambuddhasse atti bhikkave asava dassana pahatabba atti bhikkave asava samvara pahatabba atti bhikkave asava pative sevana vaha pahatabba atti bhikkave asava adivasana pahatabba atti bhikkave asava parivajjana pahatabba atti bhikkave asava vinodana pahatabba atti bhikkave asava bhavana pahatabba. Dear Dhamma friends, this is our second Dhamma talk in this retreat based on this Jhana Grove meditation center. And as we discussed and agreed on the first talk itself, this will be delivered as a series of talks based upon the same topic, namely one of the great discourses, one of the discourses of the Buddha, namely Sabbasava Sangharapariyaya Sutta. That is basically to teach the ways and means to abandonment of taints, and by taking the time in the first discourse, we try to understand briefly about the term taints. It is one of the deepest layers of the defilements. According to the teaching of the Buddha, the root cause of our suffering is a defilement, that means internal factor, and it operates in 3 layers. Transgressional form and the obsessional form, and this underlining the anusaya level. So this particular taint known as this asava, or this influx or intoxicant, or this it is considered as the subtlemost, the deepest layer of defilements. So therefore, one has to, even to get an theoretical understanding, go in systematic way, then only one can understand it, and this understanding has to support one's own deductive thinking and the inferential thoughts. Then only one will start practicing it or develop kind of a resolute faith to test it and put into practice. So therefore, at least one has to have kind of a theoretical understanding, but it is not enough. It has to be justified internally by these deductive thoughts, and then one will try to explore into that. And that is how we can understand these taints or influxes. The outermost part, usually easy to understand, it is direct, and generally, in the generalized form, Buddha mentioned it as a desire. It appears like in a twofold manner, Kamaraga, manifest in the outermost layer in the twofold manner as your internal desire, as well as it is arousing by the outside desirable objects. So therefore, whenever these two come into being, the mind become transgressed, sometimes in order to gratify these sensuous objects. You may transgress the social law and therefore causing trouble to the society as well as to oneself, causing trouble to the present moment as well as to the future. So therefore it is considered as unethical, and the answer for that is the ethical restrainment or the sila sikha. So this is highly valued and one of the starting point of the restrainment in the teaching of the Buddha. Once that is being fairly controlled only, one can understand, even though you control the kilesa karma and vattu karma, that is outermost layer, still there is an obsessional kind of desire. It usually do not transgress as such, but whenever conducive situation happens, it can develop into the transgressional form, and then again you will be in trouble. So therefore, even if you control at the transgressional level, this obsessional level is maybe intact. So once you become successful in transgressional form, if you wish to have a moral life for long, for persistency, you have to take care about this obsessional form. That is, we call the concentration training, and that is the point where we go to meditation centers and take an object of meditation and try to keep the mind with that object, so that at a certain amount of concentration you may develop the mastery over this obsessional type of desire, and there you can experience a period of time free of this obsessional type also, and it is called kind of a pleasure, kind of a spiritual happiness known as the immaterial pleasure. So this is against the material pleasure or sensuous pleasure. Is highly noble, it is highly appreciated. But even then, in the teaching of the Buddha, he wants us to see still deep layer known as this anusaya, the hidden form, and asava, the taint, what we are talking is part and parcel of this hidden form, latent tendencies. So it's understanding as well as the abandonment is not so direct and easy as these two types what we have discussed, because these forms which is underlying can work in different ways in a perverted manner. So one has to have a systematic understanding about. That is why the Buddha at the outset of the discourse, he says, I recommend this abandonment of this kind of a latent type only for the people, those who can see it and know it. Not for the people, those who do not see, do not know them. So therefore it becomes a very one-to-one relationship, direct thing to, first of all, to understand and then go into abandonment. As far as these three layers are concerned, there are a number of similes given. This is just for the sake of theoretical understanding and the theory knowledge. It says that especially country like this, Australia, once in a way there are some wildfires and conflagration. There it is difficult even to the government to control. Ultimately it devastates thousands and thousands of acres of the valuable forest. So this is called conflagration. This is almost like the transgressional state of the defilements. When that come up to the transgressional level, the particular person even can't control it, though it is destructive, and be aware of it. It go beyond its or her control. This is almost like the conflagrated wildfire. And then this very wildfire start with a small spark or a small fire you create out of a box of matches. When the stick, the matchstick, hit on the side of the box of match, there's a small spark appears, and that was hidden in the medicine or in the chemicals of the side of the box as well as the top of the stitch. When they come into a certain contact, certain pressure and a certain angle, the spark happens, and that spark, if you keep it to a wild place, a dry place, it will catch fire and grow into this conflagration. But when it is at the tip of the stitch, it's very easy to extinguish, but once it is given a proper dry matter, it go into the wildfire level. So this already arisen spark is something like obsessional kind of defilements. It has not yet gone yet up to this transgressional level. But one can see it has the potential to go up to that uncontrollable level. So obsessional level and the transgressional level, yet another way one can observe or understand, when it is transgressed, it is socially exposed, at least another person can come to know this particular person is under such a defilement. And therefore it is exposed. But when it is at the obsessional level, still the particular person who possesses knows what is the mental coloration and the configuration, but outsiders may or may not be aware of it. So that is the way the transgressional form and the obsessional form can be understood. But as far as we go to these underlying tendencies, it is like the potential hidden in the chemicals of the box of matches and the at the tip of the stick. So there is no signs of heat or any kind of a fire, but they are hidden and potential is there. The asava and the anusaya are something like that. You can keep it in your pocket, or you can keep it in your vehicle, and you even throw it into a dry forest. It won't make any difference, because it is not yet manifested as a spark. So therefore, you will never recognize the danger, though it is hidden and as a potential. So that is why until you come up to the level of tackling of this potential, it is very difficult to say at what time this stick and the side of the box of matches come into the correct angle and the pressure. Whenever that angle and the pressure given, the spark can happen. And that means your taints and these influxes and these intoxicants, whenever the conducive situation given, it definitely manifests into a small spark of fire. And if that given dry matter, it will go into the conflagration, into the uncontrollable fire. So if someone wish to abandon and claim, one has to see all the three layers, and this moral training, concentration in training, and the wisdom training are meant for these three layers. Therefore, we start with the moral training and restraining our physical and verbal behavior or misdeeds, and then come to the subtle state of concentration training. And there we do away with these 5 hindrances, so that you can experience either access or absorb concentration, and there you can make sure for a period of time you are free from these defilements. But underneath or underlying tendencies are still hidden. The most dangerous thing is they never manifest it themselves as dangerous until otherwise they get the proper conducive conditions. So therefore, once you come up to this concentration level successfully, still you must not give up your endeavor. You have to deep dive into understanding of this asana. That needs a very technical kind of penetration into oneself. That is, it is called inner journey, or going deep into oneself, penetration. That is why it's in Pali it is called vipassana. In English, it's called insight. And compared with all the knowledges and the skill, worldly knowledges and the skills, they are always extrovert outwardly, but only the insight that the Buddha recommended, going inward, therefore it is sometimes known as the going against the grain. So once the Buddha given a basic introduction about this kind of asava, he says that only those who can see they are in correct perspective, and only those who can understand them in correct perspective have a hope. And then the Buddha goes deep into the pragmatic side, on the practical side. He says what to see and what to know. The tool he introduces is the yoniso manasikara, the wise reflection, and opposite of is unwise reflection. And then the Buddha says, whenever you attend to any contact in an unwise way, the chances are there for these taints and the influxes to give rise up to the obsessional level. If you are knowing this phenomena and attend to all the contacts in the wise way, you get two benefits. One thing, it will not automatically go into the obsessional level of the desire, but you can understand the mechanism, how it happens. So these both the benefits are possible only with the insight meditation. And as far as the beings are concerned, only the human beings can have a hope on that. So therefore, being a human, it's one of the great things, one to establish this yoniso manasikara, or wise reflection. And after giving this much of instruction, the Buddha says, for his omniscient knowledge, there are 7 layers or 7 kinds of these stains, and you have to use 7 techniques or tactics to tackle them or abandon them. The first and foremost is the one we call the kind of a taint that can be abandoned by seeing, by mere understanding, by mere seeing. They themselves will they will drop off. That is the first and foremost type of the taints. And the second type you can control by restraining. Usually in the traditional way of expressing the 3 trainings, first is the restrainment of faculties, or restrainment regarding the morality, and then concentration training, and the last is the wisdom training. But when, as far as these taints are concerned, the first and foremost thing is the wisdom training, kind of by seeing and understanding, you can get rid of certain amount of taints. Then only you will really understand why one should restrain. Otherwise, you will do it in the ritualistic way or in the superficial way. You don't know the real meaning, why one should restrain his or her physical and verbal misdeeds. Once you see the taints or these influxes in its correct perspective, you understand with real understanding, with real enlightenment, you have to accept this restrainment of faculties. So once you with proper understanding, proper foresight, you implement this restrainment, then there is another layer of taints will be abandoned or cut off. And then by abandoning, by using patisevana, for that there are basic needs. So you have to, whenever we are using basic needs, you have to take the moderate path, not to go for gratification of sensuous pleasure or self-mortification, and using these four requisites in a moderate way, there is a certain amount of taints you can abandon. And then enduring, or this adivasana, that by tolerating and be patient, by enduring, you have to tackle another layer of, another part of taints. And the parivajjana, by avoiding, you have to get rid of, abandon another part. And vinodana, and removing, last one is by development, this is meditation. Today I thought of taking the very first one, that abandoning by seeing. So therefore, in order to see, before the abandonment, you have to cut through these three layers of defilements, the obsessional, transgressional, obsessional, and then only we can see these underlying tendencies like these taints and these influxes. So whenever there is a contact, the Buddha says, you have to understand this is a good chance. Whenever the contact happens, it's a good chance for one of these defilements to come into manifestation. For example, when a visual object come and contact with your sensitivity of your eye, the seeing happens. Whenever of course at that time the eye consciousness must be there, occupied at that moment, and then seeing happens. Whenever the seeing happens, the mind read that object that you see as either desirable or undesirable. And by mere categorizing them as desirable and undesirable, there is a chance for defilements to set in. If it is a desirable, definitely you develop kind of a attachment. Whenever it is undesirable, you develop kind of a resistance or hatred. So that is how each and every contact going to opening the way to either to desire or to the hatred. Exactly with the hearing and the smelling and the tasting and bodily contacts, and whenever you think in the mental faculty. So long observations of the Buddha to be as well as the Buddha, he came to know whenever the visual objects come align with and come face to face with the sensitivity of the eye, whenever the eye consciousness is there, the seeing happens, that is so swift, so titillating. For a beginner, it is very difficult to see the mechanism and very difficult to restrain himself. So therefore, he won't recommend for a beginner to start the meditation or start seeing, inside journey with seeing. Because it is very tricky, it is very swift. So the next one is the hearing of the business. Whenever you hear, just like in seeing, you will be carried away, you will be taken for a ride by what you have heard because of your unrestrained mind. And therefore, hearing also very difficult part, very difficult juncture for a beginner to start. Smelling, touching, and he recommend the Buddha, the bodily contacts, the tactile contacts is the easiest point or starting point for the beginner. That is why in the famous Satipatthana Sutta, he recommends this dwelling on the body on body. That is the materiality, the corporeality. That mechanism is somewhat gross, somewhat verifiable, somewhat you can see the shapes and the manner, so therefore easy for the beginner. So he came out with the object of meditation, something like breathing, where the incoming air and the outgoing air touch on your body, whatever may be the sensitive place, something like the end of the nostril or top of the upper lip, and then you feel the incoming and outgoing. So this we consider as a contact. So whenever the in-breath happens, if you are really on it, and if you know this is in-breath, and exactly when the out-breath happens, you know, and you are really precisely in out-breath, that means you are with the contact. So whenever you are with the in-breath, simply you know you are not with the out-breath. You are not bewildered with the out-breath. And if it is in the out-breath, you are simply know, this is not the in-breath, I am on the out-breath. That is what we call the precision. That is what we call the precise aiming. And it goes without saying that whenever you are in the in-breath, you know that not only that you are not with the out-breath, you are not seeing, you are not hearing, you are not smelling, you are not touching, rather you are not thinking. If that is the case, we say our mind is wandered off. Our precision is wrong. Meditation is no more. And the mindfulness is not aligned. So therefore, very knowing of the in-breath as in-breath is a very appreciable kind of precision. There you know it is not out-breath, it is not hearing, it is not seeing, it is not any other, but in-breath. This is a very good starting point. So therefore, even if you are successful in moral training, restraining of your physical and verbal misdeeds and coming to terms with precepts, and even if you are successful in concentration training, where you can keep the breath or keep the object of meditation with face-to-face with the noting mind, these are conducive conditions for you to have this precision. So in the insight meditation, the precision or precise aiming means whenever the in-breath happens, you know it is in-breath. Whenever the out-breath happens, you know it is out-breath. In order to facilitate this, or in order to reinforce this precision, it says, if you know the touching point, when the in-breath happens, this is yet another assurance for your contact. So some people may say, when I am experiencing in-breath, I feel at the end of the right nostril. And when the out-breath happens, it may be the same place or some place close by. Maybe the left nostril or somewhere middle in the nose or top of the lip. Whatever may be, this touching point reinforce your contact of the in-breath and out-breath, and it may be separate places, one place. The third aspect to reinforce this precision is to the discrete and discriminate understanding and the experience of in-breath and out-breath. That means, to cite an example, to give a hint, the in-breath you may feel the cool air column touching your nostril, and you feel the cold nature. And when it's coming out, if you are so precise, you can see it is somewhat warmer. So on top of the in-breath and out-breath difference, on top of this touching point, still you can go further towards the precision that in-breath is cooler and out-breath is warmer. Or sometimes you may see in-breath is very turbulent in the air column, and out-breath is calm and quiet. Or in-breath is longer and out-breath is shorter. So whenever you step into this sphere of insight meditation, you are going to see multidimensional, and specifically 3 dimensions. The air column, coming in and going out is one. The touching points is the second. And the characteristic difference, that is called natural characteristics of in-breath and out-breath. So this is the maximum for a beginner can give and can try at the outset of your meditation. Even if it is not so precisely known, that does not indicate you are disqualified for this meditation, but this must be your aim in order to facilitate the yoniso manasikara, the wise reflection, and to gain the middle path in the shortest way. Supposing one person is experiencing either of them, one of these three, either in and out air column, or the touching point, or heat, cold, stiffness, tension, movements like discrimination, and he or she come to know, now I am face to face with the object of meditation, or in-breath and out-breath. When that is happened, this is the middle of the contact. The contact, the signal come up to a certain grossness. Only our untrained mind can feel it, touch it, and experience it. Because our mindfulness is still young and the concentration is not yet aligned. So therefore, after a certain roughness or certain maturity of the rubbing sensation, only you come to know this is in-breath, that is out-breath. So when you find the ways and means to keep the oncoming in-breath and out-breath for your certainty for a long period, your adverting or your aim must be to see as early as possible. That means one thought moment maybe just before this grossness happens, how it come into being. Then you will come to know it is not coming from blues, it's not created by the divine power. It is just the subtlety become gross. Then one become gross only you can come to know. But if you are sharp enough, if you are focused enough, if you are adverted enough, you can see the subtle shapes of the in-breath, oncoming in-breath, and more you directed your attention to that arising part of the breath, you have to look very closely. You have to look very immediately. You have to develop so much of friendliness with this in-breath and out-breath. Whenever your attention reach the arising part of the breath, as and when it arises, you will really understand. Your mind cannot be busy with what is happening right round in terms of sounds, bodily pains, or thinking. So it has to be really directed to the beginning of the object, the in-breath, the beginning of the out-breath. So that is what the yogi's duty. You must facilitate so that mind is observing the beginning part of the in-breath and the beginning part of the out-breath. So when you go deep and deep, in the sense become more and more close and the immediate, you may see still subtle layers of the incoming breath. So this is called the subtle breath. That means before the mindfulness sets in, before the concentration gains the power, your mind is gross. Therefore, you see only the peak or the most gross form of the breath. Some people even claim they can't feel it, even at its highest grossness. That is why the Mahasi Sayadaw came out with the movement of the abdomen. And there are one technical point. When you are observing the in-breath and out-breath, for one in-breath, there's a one peak, and for the one out-breath, there's a one peak of contact. So that means one breath, in-breath and out-breath, is two contact points at the peak of in-breath and the peak of out-breath. So those who have no much of sensitivity, they will say, even I try my best, I can't feel the breath. Instead, when you are knowing the difficulty, as a teacher suggests, if you focus the attention to the breath, to the abdomen, you can see, instead of two signals of in-breath and out-breath, there's a one prominent signal, one signal happen in the rising and falling. So therefore, those who can't trace these two little signals of in-breath and out-breath, sometimes be successful in finding the gross one signal of rising and falling. That is one of the justification the Maha has given, why he came out with this rising and falling as a technique. Whatever may be, at the beginning you see the gross form, and your method, what you have to facilitate is, your precise aiming should be focused is to see the arising part of the object, rising and falling, or in-breath and out-breath. When you are going along this path, as I mentioned, you become more immediate, more precise, and more prepared to see, and the closeness between the observed object and the observing mind will come closer. And you are bound to see more and more natural characteristics of the in-breath as well as out-breath. At the beginning, I just cited some examples like heat and cold, the turbulent and inturbulent. And when you are to observe the subtle breath and keep the contact, keep the observation, how it becomes gross, you may see it is like a wave or like a continuity of some actions. So therefore you are not only see a shape, you can see some difference in manners. Let me put it in this way. Whenever you see the peak event of the in-breath, it is like a camera shot. You can see the shape. But if you have to see the whole process from the subtle in-breath to the gross peak, it is like a video clip. You can see many, many modes, many, many shapes, and many, many manners. So therefore, at the beginning, you get the silent shots or the camera shots. And when you are close observing very closely, as if you are seeing the video clip. So this change is, in the technical jargon, they say, only the person who sees only the peak is known as the shape, but the person who is skillful to see from subtlety to the grossness, it is called the shape together with the manners. So when you are referring, when you are relating, narrating this experience to the teacher, therefore not only specifically the Mahasi Sayadaw, but his disciple, Pandita Sayadaw, he developed a method to straighten the communication. He says, if you are so sharp, if you are so lucky, if you so well understood about the instructions, you can cut short in reporting. You have to tell, I am observing the in-breath, or I am noting the in-breath. The in-breath appear like the coldness. And when the out-breath happens, I noted this as out-breath, it appear like warm. So you will get 100% marks. It's very clear the object, very clearly you indicate that to advert your mind to the in-breath by noting. And what you come to know is the coldness in the in-breath and the warmness in the out-breath. So when you keep on observing, you will add more and more of your experience. I noted in-breath as it happened. It was cold and it was like a turbulent. It was a long process. Likewise, you can add more information only when you are at the mode of seeing the manners. So it's very clear for the teacher when the disciple is reporting whether he is really precise. That means he's precise aiming and diligent effort. So Pandita Sayadaw, he says, whenever someone is understanding to extract these natural characteristics or its nature, it is something like the sap of the Dhamma. You are really, really understanding the phenomena as such, without prejudices, without reaction, without assuming, So that is what the early part of the instructions are promoting and adverting. So when it is happening, you are bound to see very, very subtle layers of in-breath and out-breath. So the Buddha, in explaining how to derive the middle path, specifically in the Tissamettaya Sutta, in the Sutta Nipata, he says, Ubho ante viditvana majje mantana lippati. So the Purisoti Maha, so Puriso, Ida Purisoti Maha Puriso, so the Sibbani Machaka. He says, whenever the contact happens, it is one end. If someone can see the beginning of the contact, that is the other end. So, the untrained yogi, the beginner, always see only one end that is already formed, already manifested touch, the contact. But he's been advised to see the beginning so that he can see two ends. Only by seeing two ends, he becomes qualified to assimilate what you call the middle path. So whenever you start with seeing the middle, that's the beginning of meditation, as you cut through, you will see the subtle part, as and when it arises, that means you are so precise and diligent. When that happens, you are bound to see the tapering of part of the in-breath. That means after it becomes peak, it becomes slow down, it becomes disappearing side, tapering side, and waning off. Exactly the out-breath. So now you are qualified to see, I see the breath from beginning through the middle to the end. The point is there, the point that I wanted to make is, usually untrained minds see only the gross part of the middle. The instructions are to advert you, focus you to the beginning. And you get the bonus of seeing the end as a result. In other words, we can say, our vision is only capable of seeing 1/3 of the phenomena if it is untrained. The well-instructed yogi, he is trying to add yet another dimension, that is to focus the attention to the beginning of the phenomena. So whenever you become endowed with seeing the beginning and the middle, definitely, invariably, you get a chance to see its tapering off. So that is what in the Satipatthana Sutta or in the Anapanasati Sutta and Girimananda Sutta and some of the Rahulavada Sutta, the Buddha advised in the Anapanasati meditation, mindfulness in the in-breath and out-breath, Sabbakaya padisangvedi asasissamiti sikkati, Sabbakaya padisangvedi pasasissamiti sikkati. That means you see, you restrain yourself, seeing the whole breath body. That is indicating at the beginning you were not sharp enough to see the subtle beginning and the subtle ending. Now, due to the precise aiming and due to diligent effort and with the preparedness, you are bound to see the beginning through the middle to the end. When that happens, if the thoughts, sounds and pains are distracting, definitely you can't cut through. Because mind will be ever at all be with the gross point at the middle. But when you see the beginning and the middle, you find how fragile it is, how swift it is, how unpredictable it is, how quickly changing the facets. So, if you are well instructed and if you have the proper advertence, only you can entertain it. That means you are penetrating into the object of meditation, and more you see a lot of differences. It is leading to change your impression upon the primary object. In modern jargon, it says sensational transference. Whenever you see something at the face value for the first time, you get what you call an impression. And if you are going to another object, that impression will not last for the second one because it is another object. Supposing the same object is arising again and again, you are focusing the attention to the same object again and again, then what happens? Then your sensation slowly transfer. And the Buddha take this opportunity, instead of going for varietal entertainment, he asked the yogi to take one, whatever may be prominent object, and observe it again and again and again and again. So when it is happening from the top, middle to the, reaching the mind to the beginning and the end, you try to start to feel this sensational transference. For that, this is you must be thin slicing of your time. As and when the in-breath happens, you must be prepared that your sensitivity to the time must be so precise. Then only you can see one thought moment before the breath start. And when it is disappearing, you will never give up. You completely touch with it. And to see the last drop. So when that happens, what we call the mind develop the vigilance. Mind develop the diligence. Mind develop the mindfulness. Otherwise, you are negligent, not diligent, because you see only already formed contact. You fail to see the arising part of the contact. Therefore, completely you become blindfolded to see the cessation of the contact. So the method, the radical reflection the Buddha suggested was select one neutral object which happened with the involuntary muscles, so that you can observe in the neutral way. Expect a sensational transference, employ the thin slicing of the time and penetrate into, plunge into. So when that happens, if it is happening, you will really understand the distractions of the sounds, pain, thoughts will be no more. So more and more you to see this, the early part of the beginning and the ending part of the outgoing, you will try to see the whole phenomena right from the beginning to the middle to the end. So when that happens, there's a remarkable change attributable to this sensational transference. At the beginning, when you see only the peak of the in-breath and out-breath, there are clear-cut differences between the in-breath versus out-breath. They call intrinsic characteristic. They call the personal characteristic or natural characteristics. You are asked to collect as much as possible natural characteristic, intrinsic characteristic, personal characteristic. Whenever you develop the skillfulness to see the beginning to the middle to the end, ultimately these all intrinsic, personal characteristic dissolved into common character. This is what really means the sensational transference. So unless otherwise you are patient enough, unless otherwise you are prepared enough, unless otherwise you have enough diligent effort and precise aiming, definitely you will give up the operation halfway and come out and tell this and that and many inferential knowledges. But the Buddha says all are half knowledge unless you to see from the individual characteristics to the common characters. This is a huge change, not only in the meditation, not only the sensational transfer of the object, it will create a huge change in your personality, in your likings and disliking, in your judgments. Definitely you will develop more and more patience and accumulating more and more information before arrive at a decision. Before deriving an inferential inference, so that is how you become mature. And this can be more explained regarding this physicality, the corporeality, but don't think this is limited to Kayanupassana or this physicality or the rising and falling or in-breath and out-breath. Whenever you come to the common character, this common character is common to mentality and physicality, internal and external, liking and disliking. Whenever you go patiently to the common character, it is universal. That may be some of the terms that Carl Jung used as the universal unconscious. At the peak, at the individual characteristics, lot of differences, lot of discrimination, lot of liking and disliking, and many things. Whenever you calm down and go to the common character, it is exactly the same. The Buddha recognized this as impermanence. If you have to see the object so closely, right from the beginning to through the middle to the end, ultimately you will end up and see there is nothing to grasp hold, because facets and manners and the shapes are ever changing. Whether it is rising and falling, or in-breath and out-breath, or your emotions, or your likings, or your desire, or your hatred, whatever may be, only and only if you see the middle of or the gross side of the phenomena, you will arrive at a decision. It indicates how imperfect you are, how badly you are informed. That is why the rush to arrive at a decision. But if you are waiting to see, collect more and more information about any emotion, any physical phenomena, if it is recurrent thing, to see from the beginning to the middle to the end, you will understand that things are changing the facets, the shapes, the manners, in such an incessant manner that impermanence is a permanent thing in the world. This is the most permanent thing in the world, that is the impermanence. So when you come up to that observation of rising and in-breath and out-breath, up to that point, whenever the common character sets in to see the changing facets, you feel quite nauseatic. You feel quite boring. You feel quite uncertain, deranged, dislodged, uncertain. Because earlier you supposed to take everything is permanent and you can draw conclusions and decisions and liking and disliking. Whenever you to see everything is in such a flux and changing, your internal tendency is to get up and go, or to entertain doubts, or sometimes you fall into sleep and you will feel jerks in your sittings and you lose the object, lose the mindfulness, everything, and all of a sudden you get jerks. This is a very good sign. Of course, untrained mind and uninstructed people consider this as a failure or mistake or personal weaknesses. But to see them in the correct perspective, that means in the Yoniso Manasikara, from the middle path, this is a very good sign. You are losing your egocentric kind of thinking pattern, and therefore it feel like uncertainty, and it manifests as something boring, manifests as something monotonous, something like you are deranged, dislodged. So therefore, unless otherwise you are really communicating and discussing and understanding, you will never report this kind of thing to your teacher. Even in the interviews, you think it is something wrong. And you attribute it to external factors. It is due to too much of heat, or it is due to too much of cold, it is due to I have eaten too much, many things. But you have to do 1001 times this trial and error, and well instructed, then only you know the wise reflection and the unwise reflection. Whenever you bound to see this beginning through the middle to the end, this kind of a sensational transference happens, it is always to discourage you, always to push you around, aside, or to fall into sleep. So this is a kind of a blessing in disguise, only if you are going prepared. That is why the Buddha says, if you wish to see these stains, wish to see the influxes, wish to see the disguised shapes of the desire and the perverted nature, you have to go prepared. Don't rush to a decision and share with the senior meditators and report short to the point. Don't add any judgment of yours, because it is always misdirecting the correct information, and there you must have the yoniso manasikara. That means to keep up with the disappearing object. And I will put it this way, as far as you see the individual characteristics, distinct characteristic of the peak of the in-breath and out-breath, it is easy for your language to put it into a communication. But whenever the individual characteristic disappears and the common character comes, you find your language is not enough. Very difficult to express. And you hardly fail to see the disappearance of the in-breath and the out-breath. Instead, you will report your breath is disappearing together. That means you can't perceive the breath. So whenever it happens, it's a very good sign. You have to mobilize or give more deep layers of mindfulness to set in. That means your average mindfulness is not enough. You have to be very alert or very vigilant and diligent and demand a deeper layers of mindfulness, deeper layers of concentration. And if you are successful, you will say next day, today you will get up and go, telling that the breath is the one supposed to see, but it is not available, so you make an excuse to get up and go. But if next day, if you are going in the prepared way, and if you have to see this tapering off or dwindling off of the in-breath and out-breath, you will see if you go prepared, still you can trace it back little further. That little furthering is the furthering of mindfulness, furthering of concentration, and opening the doors to the insight knowledge. And you are going to from the known to unknown, consciousness to unconscious. And the meditation then onward becomes something happening rather than doing. That means your energy, the diligent effort, changing into the wise or more higher kind of energy, less and less exerting of energy, but the more wise way. So you learn this, the machine, and therefore no much of wear and tear. You know how to calibrate it. You know how to synchronize it to the deep layers of mindfulness and deep layers of concentration. When that happens, first time in your life, you are preparing and becoming qualified to see the beginning, the middle and the end of the phenomena. Maybe in-breath and out-breath or rising and falling. And when you go to walking meditation, definitely it will be little furtherance, and you see some kind of seeing, some limited amount of hearing, and wind movements. Everything once in a way come and throb into the tapestry of mindfulness, and you will employ the same. How the seeing happens, how the hearing happens, how any kind of tactile sensation happens, is the operation of one thought moment, or it's a series. If you are looking at it from the series point of view, at least the beginning, the middle and the end kind of point of view, you can see it is not a one thought moment, it's a agglomeration and conglomeration of thought moments. Not only the left leg and the right leg, exactly the way seeing, hearing, smelling, touching, all the kind of thing. So once that reinforcement happen, you can go further into the day-to-day affairs also. You are changing one to the other, so much of emotions, so much of bodily activities, but each and everything happening in the same phenomena. Each and everything has its own origin, and own middle, and own cessation. Even 1001 thing and 1001 thing happen in the one moment. Everything has its own intrinsic origin, intrinsic coming into being, and intrinsic cessation. There is no confusion in the nature, unless otherwise you confuse it. So you have to be very patient, get a distance look, observe the thing as it happens. Don't assume as me, mine and my thing. Don't assume it is good or bad. Don't assume this as justifiable or unjustified. You just see the phenomena. So when that can happen, with that kind of understanding, when you go and sit, again the mindfulness will be deepened. In the sitting, it is the depth. Day-to-day activities, it is the width. In the day-to-day activities, a lot of activities, and you can't cut through into the deep layers, but catering for broad aspects. But when you're in the sitting, one aspect may be cut deep into that. When that happens, you can see everything has a common pattern, whether it's hearing, seeing and kind of thing. But you master it with the bodily contact, and there you understand even the desire, even the hatred, even the ignorance has its own pattern. Once it is conflagrated or transgressed, you react in such a way, you assume it in such a way, it is created by someone else. Or you feel that you are very innocent, you have nothing to take any responsibility, something happened, and therefore other party is at fault. But if you go to the deep root, you will understand it's completely an inner business, starting from very subtle level, and if you are not nipping it at the bud level, ultimately it comes to the point where even you can cut it and knock it down by an axe. So ultimately, without knowing this one, you find fault with the nature. You find fault with the government, or the climate, or the neighbor, or whatever may be. So more and more you meditate, you will be more and more observant, and will be reluctant to arrive at a decision. So therefore it says in the psychoanalysis kind of jargon, it says you develop evenly suspended attention and suspended decision. That is how you become a wise person. And when that happens, you understand this desire itself has 3 layers. Most gross layer is the transgressional form, and for that one the ethics are addressing. And the middle layer, that is what the concentration training is happening. Even if you are mastering these 2, unless otherwise you see this, the subtle starting of the desire, subtle beginning of the hatred and the ignorance, you will never master the whole mechanism or the cause of suffering. So the Buddha gives the very prominent answer. Whenever you cut the vegetation and the stem of the tree, if the roots are intact, again and again it will shoot again. Exactly the way, even if you tackle your kilesas or defilements at the moral level, people will come and say, you are a very moral person, very in good demeanor, talks and behavior and everything, but you will come to know this is the external, but internally still you have hindrances like sensuous desire. And you may hide it with the mask of the culture, but internally it is there. So even if you come to a meditation center and develop jhanic experiences, you know, you have to know, you have not uprooted or cut the taproot. So therefore at any time, whenever you are going out of the meditation center, the desire can overwhelm you. You don't believe because you have experienced so much of a time period without any traces of the desire. That means you have not seen the taints. You have not seen these influxes. You have not seen this infiltration. And that is why the Buddha says, only people those who can see, only people those who know can tackle these taints. Not the people who do not know and do not see. And that was the picture prehistoric time of the Buddha. There were a lot of people and saints and pandits and everything. They came out with this astrology, Ayurveda, all the kind of thing. And did a lot of contributions, it seems. But the Buddha never gave up his quest for the truth. And cutting through, whenever he come to know this deepest layer, the hidden layer or latent tendencies, he never made any comment or declaration. After knowing that only, he made the declaration, I see, I know. And not only that, out of compassion, he tried to share with the other people in need, and not by mere blessings, or not by mere request, or not by doing other skillful job. With all, still you have to cut through and see the things in its original form. Therefore, whenever the desire arises, don't give up at that level. Mind you that desire is some character, some dhammata or phenomena arising again and again. Whenever the desire arises, exactly like you are focusing precisely on the breath, you have to see at the arising part. That means you must not hate the desire, you must not hate the hatred, you must not underestimate your bewilderment or your ignorance. You have to consider them as subject matters. That is what we call that observation without a reaction. Observation choicelessly. Observation without an assumption. Premeditated kind of thinking. So then only you can see, just like the breath, the desire has its own beginning, the middle and the end. The hatred has the beginning, the middle and the end. Even the ignorance has the beginning, the middle and end. They are intrinsic, they are independent, they are private. You learn or you develop the mindfulness, the concentration and the wise reflection through this cross-action of mindfulness on the in-breath and out-breath. In sitting, closed eyes, no sounds, no smell, no talking. But you harden it in the walking meditation, little bit of sounds and some visual objects, and intentional work for your left leg and the right leg, and wind movements and some other challenges. And then you harden your mindfulness at the concentration, but in the day-to-day activities, it's a real task. That is why even in the day-to-day activities, you are not supposed to try hard in all the activities alike. Take the possible cases where you can control little, that means you are doing by yourself, limited to yourself, and under such circumstances, do little slowly in order to be self-aware, get some kind of a self-awakening that I am doing something meditatively, and employ mindfulness as much as possible. And again I am asking, listen to yourself. Listen to your own sounds. Whenever you are come and sit here, listen to your own sounds. When you are getting up from this place, listen to your own sounds. When you are listening, I am not asking you to reduce the sounds. You will be naturally, automatically reducing. Whenever you are listening, you become introvert. You become unto yourself. And that you can apply even the day-to-day activities. That is how you maximize the possibilities to develop the mindfulness and the concentration. Of course, it's very thin in the day-to-day, not like in the sitting, but possible. When that happens, it's a chance you to employ as much as possible this wise reflection in a piecemeal manner in the day-to-day activities, and your impressions upon the desire, your impression upon the hatred and bewilderment, and your neighbors, your enemies, your loved one, everything has to undergo an sensational transference. And not only you, they themselves will understand there's something happening. Because it is, even though it is happening within one person, it is happening at the community level. So your dear and near ones and come and say something happening in you, why you are not coming with or coming to the parties and not dancing with me and not drinking with me and all the kind of thing. It's an indication that the transference is happening. So you have to maintain the integrity and continue the continuity, doing all the three, sitting, walking and day-to-day activities, and then you can see more and more you see the inception, the starting point, the beginning of the defilements. They are no more defilements. They are dhammata. They become natural phenomena. Once it come up to a gross level, then only you add, you fabricate, you manifest it, and then only it become uncontrollable and bewilderment and causing problems. When you trace back to the inception, they are mere dhammata. So whenever someone is doing wrong thing, for instance, we are observing, you can see, by just punishing that fellow or find fault with him, make no any good. Unless otherwise he see his own trends, the punishment or anything won't do anything. So that is why when he is doing mistake or he is in agitated form, don't go and give advices and instruction. This is the worst time to do. So knowing that, out of compassion, you have to call the fellow in a calm and quiet place and say, this is what happened to me also, I fall in trouble and all the kind of thing. If you wish to train yourself, if you wish to restrain yourself, try to see yourself. The day you see, the day you understand, the training start. So therefore, once you understand your own case, how the egoistic ideas, how the desire, how the hatred come up to this kind of a full conflagration, and it is starting from the very little way. You are so delayed, you are so negligent at the inception, and once it comes to a conflagrated level, you become completely involved and run mad. The Buddha says, calm and quiet way, this is the case with the negligence. This is the case with the delay. So you are supposed to develop the diligence, develop the preparedness little by little, then you go in the sense against the grain. And you are the first one to understand whenever this radical reflection or the wise reflection going to set in. And the middle path going to become obvious, and that is in the sense you find the least frictional path. You feel that all the power line is intact. The communication and the transmission will be more efficient, less and less wear and tear. The machine will start to run smoothly. So these are the ways that you can understand whether you are improving in terms of insight meditation. So with that remark, I would like to sum up today's talk. Thank you very much for listening.